Title: The Black Flame and the Silver Oath. In a realm where the skies never darken and the sun shone endlessly upon the land, the kingdom of Silver Dawn stood at the height of its glory. The silver towers that rose above the horizon shimmered, reflecting the brilliance of a land untouched by shadows. The kingdom was ruled by the noble King Alden, whose family had held the throne for centuries. His reign was marked by peace, prosperity, and unwavering protection of the land from the growing darkness that threatened to seep in from beyond the borders. Yet, despite all that was good in Silver Dawn, there existed a prophecy whispered among the ancient trees of the Whispering Forest, where no human foot dared tread. A prophecy of a time when the black flame would rise, bringing with it an age of terror and destruction. And when this flame blazed, only one could stand against it. An oath sworn in silver would be the only force capable of quenching its fiery wrath. King Alden, aware of the prophecy, had always kept the legend at the back of his mind. But as the years passed, the idea seemed increasingly distant, a story meant to frighten children. Little did he know that the time was approaching for the prophecy to unfold, and the only one who could answer its call had yet to be revealed. Far to the east, beyond the vast plains and treacherous mountains, in the heart of the dark lands, a new power was awakening. The black flame, a manifestation of pure darkness and destruction, had begun to stir. It had slumbered for eons, hidden beneath the roots of the world, waiting for the perfect moment to rise again. The ancient spirit, once known as Morgareth, had long been bound by powerful enchantments, its form concealed in shadow. But now, freed from its prison, it sought to claim the world and plunge it into an eternal night. Morgareth's presence corrupted everything it touched. The winds turned cold, and the rivers ran dry. Creatures once peaceful became twisted and violent, serving as its minions in the war to come. It was said that the black flame could consume anything in its path, from steel to magic, leaving nothing but ashes behind. As the flame spread across the lands, the people of Silver Dawn felt an unease that grew stronger with each passing day. Whispers filled the streets of the capital, rumors of strange occurrences, fires that could not be extinguished, shadows that moved of their own accord, and eerie voices carried on the wind. The time had come, the black flame was rising, and only the silver oath could stand against it. In the heart of Silver Dawn, within the sacred chambers of the Silver Temple, an oath was forged long ago, a promise made by the first King Alden, who swore that his bloodline would always protect the realm from the forces of darkness. The Silver Oath was not a simple vow, it was a binding promise. Woven into the very fabric of the kingdom, inscribed into the walls of the temple and the hearts of all who dwelled there. The oath was not just a title, but a mantle, one that would pass from generation to generation. The chosen heir would bear the mark of the oath, a symbol that would grant them the power to stand against the black flame. The silver blade, a weapon forged in the heart of the kingdom's sacred mountain, was said to be the key to wielding the power of the oath. But in this time of crisis, the chosen one had yet to be revealed. And so, a call was sent out. All the kingdom's warriors, mages, and scholars were summoned to the Silver Temple. The time had come for the oath to be fulfilled. Among the many who answered the call, one figure stood apart: Alara, a young woman with a mysterious past. She had been raised as a commoner, unaware of her true heritage. But there was something about her unspoken connection to the ancient power of the Silver Oath. Alara had always felt out of place in the world. A skilled warrior, she had spent her life training in the art of the sword, but there was an emptiness within her, as if she had been waiting for something. The moment she stepped into the Silver Temple, everything changed. She felt the oath's power awaken within her, as if the very air thrummed with energy. It was there, in the presence of the elders, that the truth was revealed. Alara was the last descendant of the original Oathbearer, the bloodline that had sworn to protect Silver Dawn from the coming darkness. The silver blade, long hidden in the temple's vaults, was meant for her. She was to be the one to wield its power and stand against Morgareth. As Alara donned the silver blade, the black flame began to burn brighter. Morgareth's forces were marching toward the gates of Silver Dawn, leaving a trail of devastation in their wake. The time had come for the final battle. The oath would be tested. Alara, now fully embracing her destiny, led the charge against the encroaching darkness. The skies themselves seemed to burn with the fury of their clash, as silver light met the consuming blackness of the flame. Each strike of Alara's blade cleaved through Morgareth's forces, but the black flame itself was not so easily defeated. The oath would demand everything from her: sacrifice, strength, and an unshakable will. At the heart of the battle, Alara faced Morgareth itself, the embodiment of the black flame. It was a fight like no other, a clash of light and dark, of creation and destruction. The silver blade glowed with a brilliance that threatened to outshine the very stars, while Morgareth's flame burned with the fury of the ages. But in the end, it was Alara's unwavering belief in the Other connection to the land, the people, and the power of light that proved stronger. With the final strike, the black flame was extinguished, and Morgareth was banished once more. The kingdom was saved, but the cost had been great. The silver blade, now dulled and broken, was returned to the temple, its power fading until the next time the oath would be called upon. The kingdom of Silver Dawn would rebuild, stronger than ever. But Alara's story was one for the ages. The legend of the Black Flame and the Silver Oath would be passed down through generations. A reminder of the strength that lies within those who are willing to fight for the light. And though the darkness may return one day, there would always be those who would take up the oath and stand against it. Years passed, and the kingdom of Silver Dawn flourished once again. The scars of the great battle had faded, but the memory of that time lived on in the hearts of the people. Alara, though now hailed as a hero, had vanished into the mists of history, leaving behind only stories and legends of the great warrior who had saved them from the black flame. But peace, as it always is, was fragile. In the far corners of the world, whispers began to stir once more. Rumors of a new dark force, more terrifying than the black flame, began to reach the ears of the kingdom's leaders. The Silver Oath had been fulfilled, but the elders knew, deep in their hearts, that the time for the Oathbearer would come again. The balance between light and darkness was not permanent. The cycle of battle would continue, ever turning, as long as the world stood. The Silver Temple, now a symbol of the kingdom's triumph, stood as a reminder of the Oath's power. Inside its sacred halls, a new generation of warriors, scholars, and mages trained to carry on the legacy. But none knew when the next battle would come or who would be chosen to wield the silver blade once more. In the darkest depths of the world, far beneath the surface where no light had ever touched, a new flame began to stir. It was not the black flame of Morgareth, but something far older, more primal. This new force, known only as the Crimson Pyre, rose from the ashes of the Black Flame's defeat. A twisted manifestation of pure malevolence that sought to consume not just the kingdom, but the very soul of the world itself. Unlike Morgareth, the Crimson Pyre was patient. It did not seek to ravage the world immediately, but instead, it whispered in the ears of kings, queens, and rulers, corrupting them with promises of power and immortality. It crept into the hearts of men, turning them against one another, sowing distrust and chaos. The land, once verdant and full of life, began to wither. Crops failed, and animals fled. A cold wind blew from the south, carrying with it a sense of foreboding. Those who once trusted in the silver oath now questioned its ability to protect them. In the midst of this darkness, the elders once again convened, knowing the time had come to find the next oath-bearer. The kingdom was on the brink of ruin, and they could feel the shadow of the crimson pyre growing ever closer. The silver blade had been reforged, its magic renewed, but without a new champion, it would be no more than a symbol. It was a stormy night when the new oath-bearer was revealed. Far to the north, in the village of Glimmerbrook, a young woman named Lysandra gazed out over the distant mountains. She had always felt different, as if the world around her was on the verge of changing. As a child, she had heard stories of the Silver Oath and the great battle between light and darkness. But they seemed like tales of old, disconnected from her simple life. Yet, on that fateful night, as the winds howled through the trees and lightning lit up the sky, Lysandra felt the call. It was as if the earth itself was speaking to her, urging her to fulfill a destiny she had never known. When she stepped into the Silver Temple, her heart raced with a mixture of awe and fear. The ancient halls, so grand and beautiful, were alive with the energy of the oath. It resonated deep within her, as if the power of her ancestors had awakened. The elders, standing in their robes of silver and white, turned to face her. They recognized the spark within her, something ancient and powerful, yet untapped. She had the blood of the oath-bearers within her veins. Lysandra was the chosen one. She was the one who would take up the silver blade and stand against the crimson pyre. Before Lysandra could wield the silver blade, she had to prove herself worthy. The trials of the oath were not to be taken lightly. Only those who had shown true courage, wisdom, and compassion could take up the mantle of the oath-bearer. The trials began in the heart of the Whispering Forest, a place where few dared to venture. The forest was alive with magic, and it tested those who entered. Lysandra faced the trials alone, walking deeper into the forest, where shadows moved with a mind of their own. The trees whispered secrets, and the path seemed to shift with every step she took. She encountered beasts of nightmare, creatures that had been twisted by dark magic. With every battle, she grew stronger, her connection to the Silver Oath deepening. The trials were meant to break her, to test her resolve. But with each trial, Lysandra's determination grew. She would not allow the world to fall into darkness. Finally, after days of trials, Lysandra stood at the heart of the forest, where an ancient tree older than time itself stood. The tree's roots pulsed with the power of the oath, and Lysandra knew that this was where she would be tested. The final trial was not one of strength or skill, but of heart. The tree spoke to her in a voice that was both ancient and wise. It asked her if she was willing to give everything for the world, for the people, and for the light. Lysandra did not hesitate. She swore the oath, with all her heart, to protect the world from the coming darkness. In that moment, the silver blade appeared before her, its light blindingly bright. The oath had chosen her, and she was ready to face whatever lay ahead. With the silver blade in hand, Lysandra returned to the kingdom, where the Crimson Pyre's influence was already being felt. The kingdom was in turmoil, its leaders divided, and its people in despair. But Lysandra, now the oath-bearer, rallied them together. She inspired hope where there had been none. The final battle would take place in the heart of the Darklands, where the Crimson Pyre had taken root. Lysandra knew that the world's fate rested on her shoulders. The battle was fierce. The Crimson Pyre, more powerful than anything Lysandra had ever faced, seemed unstoppable. The land itself burned, and the skies crackled with dark energy. But Lysandra fought with everything she had, her silver blade glowing with the power of the oath. She was not alone. She carried with her the strength of her ancestors and the hopes of the people she protected. In the end, with a final, heart-wrenching strike, Lysandra shattered the Crimson Pyre, banishing its darkness from the world. The land began to heal, and the light of the silver dawn returned. With the fall of the Crimson Pyre, the world was at peace once more. But Lysandra knew that peace was fleeting. The balance between light and darkness was delicate, and there would always be challenges ahead. Yet, as long as the Silver Oath endured, there would always be those willing to stand against the darkness. And in the heart of Silver Dawn, a new generation of oath-bearers began to train, ready to answer the call whenever the world needed them. The story of the Silver Oath would continue, passed down from one generation to the next, as a reminder that as long as there was light, the darkness could never truly prevail. Years passed, and Lysandra's name became etched in the annals of history. The Silver Oath was renewed in her image, a symbol of hope and sacrifice for future generations. The kingdom of Silver Dawn prospered, yet Lysandra, ever vigilant, knew that peace was a fragile thing. She had seen the darkness before, and she understood that it could return when least expected. But even in the face of uncertainty, a new era had begun. The Silver Temple was no longer just a place of worship, it had become a school, a sanctuary where the next generation of oath-bearers trained. Warriors, mages, scholars, and healers gathered there, knowing that one day, they too might be called upon to stand against the encroaching shadows. Among these young hopefuls was a boy named Kalen, whose lineage was unknown, but whose heart burned with the same fire that had driven Lysandra to her victory. Kalen had spent his childhood in the quiet village of Dawnridge, far from the grandeur of the kingdom's capital. But in his dreams, he had seen the silver blade, its light blazing brightly, guiding him through the darkened nights. It was on his 16th birthday that he first entered the Silver Temple, drawn by a force he could not explain. The elders, sensing his potential, welcomed him into their fold, though they were unsure whether he was truly the next oath-bearer. But Kalen's heart was pure, and the connection between him and the oath was undeniable. While Kalen began his training, a new darkness stirred in the farthest reaches of the world. This shadow, born from the remnants of the Crimson Pyre, was not of flame and destruction, but of cold, consuming despair. It whispered into the hearts of the broken, those who had lost their hope. Its name was Iyarax, the Wraith of Nightfall. Iyarax was a being of pure shadow, able to slip between the cracks of reality and time. Unlike the Black Flame or the Crimson Pyre, which sought to burn and destroy, Iyarax sought to erase. It was a being born of forgotten promises, shattered dreams, and abandoned hopes. Where light had once been, Iyarax sought only to spread an eternal, unyielding night. This new threat was unlike anything Lysandra or Kalen had ever faced. Its power was subtle, insidious, and it could not be vanquished through strength alone. To defeat Iyarax, they would need to delve into the mysteries of the past, uncovering the lost magic that bound the world's balance together. Kalen, still learning the ways of the Oathbearers, was sent on a perilous journey with Lysandra and a group of skilled warriors. Their quest took them beyond the borders of the known world, to a place where the veil between worlds was thin and ancient powers slumbered. They journeyed through forgotten lands, where the earth itself seemed to breathe with ancient magic. The mountains whispered of forgotten gods, and the rivers carried tales of heroes long lost. It was in these lands that Kalen first understood the true weight of his destiny. He was not merely training to wield the silver blade. He was meant to unlock the hidden truths of the world, truths that could turn the tide in their battle against Iyarax. The group traveled to the Obsidian Caverns, a vast underground realm where it was said the first Oathbearers had forged the silver blade. The caverns were filled with dangerous beasts of shadow, treacherous paths, and the ever-present threat of Iyarax's influence. But it was here, in the heart of the caverns, that Kaelin discovered the ancient artifact known as the Moonstone. The Moonstone was a fragment of the world's first light, a piece of the sun itself, forged into a gemstone by the gods. It held the power to illuminate even the deepest darkness. But to unlock its full potential, Kaelin would need to undergo the trial of the moon, a test that would push him to the limits of his courage and strength. The trial of the moon was a ritual older than time itself. To claim the power of the Moonstone, Kaelin would have to confront his greatest fears. His past, his darkest memories, would manifest before him, each one more terrifying than the last. It was said that only those with pure hearts and unwavering resolve could survive the trial. As Kaelin stepped into the sacred chamber of the Moonstone, the air grew thick with magic. The walls shimmered with starlight, and the ground beneath him trembled. The trial had begun. Kaelin was first confronted by visions of his childhood, a time when he had felt weak and powerless. He saw the faces of those he had lost as parents, his friends, and heard their voices calling out to him, accusing him of not doing enough to save them. His heart ached with guilt, and for a moment, he faltered. But he remembered the teachings of Lysandra, of the Silver Oath. Strength comes not from avoiding the darkness, but from facing it and rising above it. With a deep breath, Kaelin pressed on, determined not to succumb to his doubts. He stepped forward, confronting the shadows that lurked within his heart. He saw the faces of his ancestors, the long line of oath-bearers who had come before him. They stood in silent judgment, waiting for him to prove his worth. Finally, Kaelin reached the Moonstone, its light blinding and pure. As his hand touched the stone, a surge of energy flooded through him. The power of the Moonstone awakened within him, and he felt a new sense of purpose. He was no longer just a boy, was an oath-bearer, a protector of the light. With the power of the Moonstone in hand, Kaelin returned to Silver Dawn, where Irax's shadow had begun to spread across the kingdom. The sky above them darkened, and the stars themselves seemed to tremble in fear. Irax's forces, creatures of pure darkness, had begun to pour into the world, consuming everything in their path. Kaelin, Lysandra, and the newly trained oath-bearers gathered for the final battle. Armed with the silver blade and the Moonstone, they marched into the heart of the Darklands, where Irax awaited them. The battle was unlike any other. Irax, a being of pure shadow, fought with a cold, unfeeling ferocity. The oath-bearers fought valiantly, but they could not break through the darkness. It was Kaelin, with the Moonstone in his hand, who finally confronted Irax. The power of the Moonstone lit up the sky, casting away the darkness and revealing the true form of Irax, a twisted, formless being, bound by despair. In a final act of courage, Kaelin unleashed the full power of the Moonstone, creating a beam of pure light that pierced the heart of Irax. The Wraith of Nightfall screamed, its form disintegrating into nothingness, its shadow banished from the world. The land began to heal, and the sun rose once more over Silver Dawn. Kaelin had fulfilled his destiny, and the Silver Oath was secure once again. The kingdom of Silver Dawn flourished once again. Kaelin, now a hero, stood alongside Lysandra, the two oath-bearers watching over their people. The silver blade and the Moonstone were displayed in the Silver Temple, symbols of the enduring light that would always stand against the darkness. But Kaelin knew that peace, though hard-won, would not last forever. As long as there was light, there would always be shadows. The oath-bearers would continue their work, watching over the world, ready to answer the call whenever the darkness returned. And so, the story of the Silver Oath lived on, passed down through the ages as a reminder that, no matter how dark the night, the light of hope would always shine. Despite the peace that followed Kaelin's triumph over Irax, whispers of an unseen force began to stir once again. The elders, cautious and wise, sensed the shifting tides but could not yet pinpoint the source of the disturbance. Something deep within the kingdom, something ancient and forgotten, had begun to awaken. As Kaelin and Lysandra kept a vigilant watch over the lands, strange occurrences began to unfold in the far reaches of Silver Dawn. Villages that had once been prosperous now lay in ruins, their inhabitants mysteriously vanishing without a trace. Those who returned spoke of strange creatures half shadow, half silence that hunted in the dark. They whispered of a new leader rising from the shadows, someone who had learned the ways of both light and darkness. A being who sought to unite the flames of the black pyre with the purity of the silver oath. His name was Aziel, a figure unknown to history, but whose presence now threatened to tear apart everything the oath-bearers had built. He was a fallen prince of an ancient line, long believed to be lost to time, but his blood had never truly faded. Aziel had been trained in the arts of both light and shadow, learning how to manipulate the balance between the two forces. And now, he sought to reclaim his birthright by uniting the two powers in a single, terrifying force. Aziel had spent years hiding in the shadows, learning the ancient rites that bound the black flame to the earth. The flame, once a symbol of destruction, had transformed into something far more dangerous, a conduit for both creation and annihilation. Aziel had unlocked the secrets of the black flame, using its power to warp the very fabric of reality. Where once the flame had burned in fury, it now smoldered with a cold, calculating energy, capable of shaping the future or destroying it entirely. Azel's followers, known as the Ashborn, were fierce warriors who had once been oath-bearers themselves. They had abandoned the Silver Oath, believing that true power lay not in purity but in the balance of both light and shadow. They had long since given up their pasts, binding themselves to the black flame, forsaking everything in pursuit of ultimate power. Under Azel's command, the Ashborn began to spread across Silver Dawn, laying waste to the land. Their influence was subtle, at first poisoning the minds of the weak, offering false hope to those desperate for power. But soon, the Ashborn grew bolder, and with them, the black flame grew in strength. They began to attack the heart of Silver Dawn, targeting the very source of the Silver Oath. As Kaelin and Lysandra sought to uncover the source of the growing darkness, they discovered that Azel's influence had already reached the core of the Silver Temple. A great betrayal had occurred that would forever change the course of the Oathbearers. It was revealed that a group of elders had been seduced by the promise of power that Aziel offered. They had fallen under his sway, believing that the black flame would be the key to unlocking true strength. A strength that the Silver Oath could never provide on its own. These traitors, now known as the Silver Ash, had begun to twist the sacred teachings of the Silver Oath, merging them with the dark arts of the Black Flame. They used their knowledge of the Oath's magic to corrupt the very essence of the Silver Blade, turning it into a weapon of unimaginable destruction. They had formed an alliance with Aziel, hoping to create a new order, one where light and darkness would rule together. Kaelin and Lysandra, shattered by this revelation, knew they could not face this threat alone. The very foundation of the Silver Oath had been fractured. With the Silver Ash in control of the Silver Blade and Aziel growing in power, the fate of Silver Dawn hung in the balance. In the wake of the betrayal, Kaelin and Lysandra sought out the last remaining members of the Oathbearers who had remained loyal to the true cause. They journeyed to the distant mountains of Arander, where a hidden order of ancient Oathbearers had taken refuge after the last Great War. These Oathbearers, known as the Forsaken, were not bound by the rigid laws of the Silver Oath. They had long since understood that balance was the key to true power, not purity alone, but the ability to understand both light and shadow. Led by the enigmatic Elder Amaris, the Forsaken offered their guidance to Kaelin and Lysandra. Together, they would find a way to undo the corruption of the silver blade and reclaim the oath from the hands of the silver ash. To do so, they would need to journey into the heart of the Darklands, to the site where the original black flame had been forged, and confront Azil directly. Only by confronting the source of the darkness could they hope to restore balance to the world. The journey to the heart of the Darklands was fraught with peril. As Kaelin, Lysandra, and the Forsaken made their way toward Azil's stronghold, they encountered fierce resistance from the Ashborn, who had become twisted, monstrous versions of their former selves. The Ashborn now wielded the power of both the Black Flame and the corrupted Silver Blade, making them formidable enemies. But the Forsaken, with their knowledge of both the Silver Oath and the Dark Arts, were able to hold their ground. Finally, after many trials, they reached the Black Pyre, the source of Azil's power. Here, the final battle would take place: Kaelin, Lysandra, and the Forsaken against Azil and his followers. The very earth itself trembled as the two opposing forces clashed, light and shadow intertwining in a destructive maelstrom. Azil, now fully embraced by the Black Flame, sought to merge his essence with the fire itself, becoming a godlike being of pure destruction. But Kaelin, wielding the true Silver Blade, and Lysandra, with her unwavering resolve, fought with everything they had. In the end, it was Kaelin who struck the final blow, piercing Azil's heart with the Silver Blade infused with the light of the Moonstone. The Black Flame faltered, and Azil's form crumbled into ashes. With Azil's defeat, the balance of the world was restored. The Silver Oath was reforged, stronger than before, a symbol of unity between light and shadow. Kaelin, now a true oath-bearer, took his place alongside Lysandra, both of them guiding the next generation of warriors, mages, and healers. But Kaelin knew that the true lesson of the oath was not that light would always conquer darkness, but that darkness, when embraced and understood, could coexist with light. In this balance, true strength was found. And so, the legacy of the Silver Oath lived on, passed down through the ages, as a reminder that both light and darkness were necessary for the world to thrive. As time passed, Silver Dawn began to heal from the scars of its past, its people rebuilding both physically and spiritually. Kaelin and Lysandra, now regarded as leaders of the Oathbearers, saw to it that the lessons learned from the conflict with Azil were not forgotten. Their teachings focused on balance, how light and darkness, like day and night, must coexist for the world to find harmony. But they also understood that with balance came vigilance. In the aftermath of Azil's defeat, strange whispers still lingered in the corners of the kingdom. Some believed the darkness had been eradicated, but others feared that the Black Flame had not been completely extinguished. Kaelin knew that the Black Flame's influence could never be fully erased. It would always remain as a force within the world, something that could be called upon once more. Yet, Kaelin also believed that the greatest threat came not from external forces but from within. The Oathbearers must guard against the temptation to misuse their power, for the balance they fought so hard to restore could easily tip once again. The path forward would require vigilance, unity, and wisdom. To preserve the legacy of the Oath, Kaelin and Lysandra decided to establish a council, a gathering of the wisest and most trusted Oathbearers who would guide the future of Silver Dawn. Their first order of business was to reclaim and safeguard the Silver Blade, ensuring that its true purpose as a symbol of peace and protection remained intact. Years passed, and the kingdom of Silver Dawn prospered. The Silver Oath continued to grow, with new generations of Oathbearers joining the ranks, trained not only in the ways of the sword and magic, but also in the ancient knowledge of balance. Yet, despite the peace that had been established, a shadow of doubt still loomed over Kaelin's heart. It was during a visit to the ruins of the Black Pyre, the site where Azil had fallen, that Kalen began to feel the stirrings of something he could not fully comprehend. He had returned to the place not only to reflect but also to ensure that the black flame's remnants were sealed away forever. But as he stood before the ashen remains, a strange energy seemed to pulse from the ground itself, a quiet but undeniable vibration that unsettled him. The world had not forgotten the black flame, nor had it fully reconciled with its power. Kalen's thoughts were interrupted by Lysandra, who had accompanied him on this solemn journey. "Do you feel it?" she asked, her voice a whisper on the wind. Kalen nodded, troubled. "The flame is not gone. It is dormant, waiting." Together, they knelt before the ruins, their hands resting on the earth. They chanted the ancient words of the oath, calling for protection, for understanding. Yet, the sensation only grew stronger. The energy surged beneath them, and a deep, resonating voice echoed through the air. "Silver Oath-bearers, your work is far from done," it intoned, an echo of the black flame's ancient power. "You have won this battle, but the war for balance has only just begun." Lysandra looked at Kalen, her eyes filled with resolve. "We must prepare for what comes next. The balance you speak of is fragile, but together, we will guard it." Kalen and Lysandra returned to Silver Dawn with heavy hearts, understanding that their work was far from finished. The whispers of the black flame had not been silenced, they had only been waiting for the right moment to reawaken. It was clear now that their battle had not truly been with Azil alone, but with the very essence of balance itself. The Oath-bearers gathered, and Kalen spoke of his fears. "The black flame is not a force that can be easily contained. It will always seek a way to emerge. But it is not the flame itself that we must fear, it is the corruption of the mind, the temptation to wield such power for selfish gain." He looked at each of the oath-bearers present. "We must protect our people, teach them that true strength comes from within, and from understanding both light and shadow. Only then can we ensure that we do not fall into the same traps that Azil once did." The council agreed, and a new mission was set forth to create a new order of oath-bearer zone that would act as protectors not just of the kingdom, but of the balance between light and dark. They would be vigilant, watching for signs of corruption and seeking to prevent anyone from once again attempting to wield the black flame's power. As the council disbanded, Kalen and Lysandra shared a quiet moment of reflection. The road ahead was uncertain, but they had made a vow they would never allow the balance to falter again. They would stand guard over Silver Dawn, knowing that their greatest strength lay in their unity, and that the black flame, though dangerous, could never again hold dominion over their world. Many years later, as Kalen and Lysandra stood upon a hill overlooking Silver Dawn, they knew that their journey had come full circle. They had built a lasting peace, one founded on the understanding that light and shadow, creation and destruction, must forever walk hand in hand. Their legacy would live on in the hearts of the oath-bearers, who would continue to protect the balance and carry the teachings of the Silver Oath into future generations. The black flame, though it may still stir in the depths of the earth, would never again rise to threaten the world. For the true power lay not in the flame, but in the strength of those who could stand together in the face of darkness and in the knowledge that no matter how fierce the storm, light would always return to chase it away. And so, with the final oath spoken under the rising sun, Kalen and Lysandra knew their world had been saved. The Silver Oath would endure, and the balance would remain, for all eternity. Despite the peace that had settled across Silver Dawn, there were still remnants of the Black Flame's influence that could not be ignored. Though the Silver Oath-bearers had worked tirelessly to rebuild their lands and their hearts, a new mystery began to unfurl, a mystery that reached deep into the forgotten corners of the world. Kalen, now an elder oath-bearer, had spent many quiet nights in the Temple of Light, poring over ancient scrolls and texts, seeking answers to the riddle of the Black Flame's origin. origin. He had discovered an unsettling truth: the black flame was not just a destructive force, it was a key. A key to unlocking a hidden power, an ancient force buried deep beneath the earth that no one had ever dared to comprehend. Lysandra, who had grown wise through the years, joined him in his study. "What have you found, Kaylin?" she asked, her voice as steady as ever. Kaylin looked up from the scroll, his eyes troubled. "The black flame is not a simple force of destruction. It was once used to seal away something far more dangerous. The flame was created to lock away an ancient being, an entity older than the world itself. And now, it seems the seal is weakening." Lysandra's face grew serious. "Are you suggesting that there is something more dangerous than the black flame itself?" Kaylin nodded. "Yes. This entity is the true source of all imbalance. It is a creature of pure chaos, born from the void before creation. It has no form, no purpose, only the desire to consume everything in its path. The black flame was created to imprison it." Lysandra's gaze hardened. "Then we must find this being before it awakens." Determined to uncover the truth, Kaylin and Lysandra set out on a quest that would take them far from Silver Dawn. They journeyed to the Forbidden Mountains, where the ancient texts spoke of the last known location of the prison that held the creature. The path was treacherous, filled with trials designed to test the strength and resolve of any who sought to reach the heart of the mountains. They faced harsh winds, shifting landscapes, and strange creatures that seemed to guard the secret of the mountain. Yet, through their trials, Kaylin and Lysandra found themselves growing stronger together. Their bond, forged in the fires of past battles, now became their greatest asset. At last, after many weeks of travel, they reached the summit of the Forbidden Mountains. There, hidden beneath the earth, they found the entrance to an ancient chamber, a chamber sealed by powerful runes and guarded by the last remnants of the black flame. The runes spoke of a time long past, when the creature had been bound by the united forces of the Oathbearers and the Elemental Guardians. Kaylin placed his hand on the runes, his fingers tracing the ancient symbols. "This is it," he said quietly. "The creature is here, sealed away for eons." Lysandra looked around the chamber. "Then why'd I feel something? Something stirring?" Kaylin's expression darkened. "The seal is weakening. We must act quickly." As Kaylin and Lysandra began their ritual to strengthen the seal, a terrible tremor shook the mountain. The ground cracked open, and a wave of pure darkness poured from the earth, filling the chamber with an oppressive, suffocating presence. The black flame flared to life around them, but it was no match for the ancient force that began to stir. From the shadows, a voice like 1,000 whispers filled the chamber. It was the voice of the void, ancient and indifferent. "You cannot stop what has been set in motion, Oathbearers," it hissed. "I am the end of all things. I am the darkness that waits beyond the stars. And now, I am free." The ground trembled as a dark, formless shape began to take form. It was an entity of pure chaos, a being of pure destruction and void. It was not a creature of flesh and bone, but a living darkness, consuming everything in its path. Its presence warped the very air around it, twisting reality itself. Kaylin and Lysandra stood firm, their silver oaths shining bright, but they knew the truth: they could not defeat this force alone. This was not a battle of strength or magic, but of will and unity. The ancient beings that had once sealed the creature had known this, and they had left behind a final message. "Together, we are the key. Together, we can seal the void once more." With their powers combined, Kaylin and Lysandra called upon the ancient forces that had once stood guard over the Silver Oath. They channeled the light of the Silver Blade, the power of the Moonstone, and the strength of the Oathbearers passed into a single, radiant beam of pure light. The black flame flared and surged, joining with the light to form a powerful barrier against the darkness. But the void resisted, feeding on the fear and doubt that had long plagued the world. The creature twisted and coiled, growing larger and more powerful with every passing second. It was the culmination of all the darkness that had ever existed, and it threatened to consume everything. As the creature closed in, Kaelin and Lysandra locked eyes. They understood that the only way to stop the void was to sacrifice everything, to give up their very lives to seal it once more. Without hesitation, they invoked the final oath. By the light of the silver blade, and by the power of the oath, we bind you once more. Never to rise again, never to break free. The chamber erupted in light and darkness, and for a moment, all was still. The creature shrieked, its form dissipating into nothingness as the seal was reforged. The black flame flickered and died, and the darkness was banished once more. But Kaelin and Lysandra were gone. Their sacrifice had sealed the void forever, but in doing so, they had given up their lives. The kingdom of Silver Dawn, now safe from the ancient terror that had once threatened it, would never forget the sacrifices made by Kaelin and Lysandra. The oath-bearers who followed them would continue to guard the balance, ensuring that light and darkness would never again clash in such a destructive way. The final words of Kaelin and Lysandra echoed throughout the ages. Together, we are the key. Together, we can guard the balance. And so, the oath lives on. Many years had passed since Kaelin and Lysandra had made the ultimate sacrifice to seal away the void. The people of Silver Dawn had prospered, their kingdom growing stronger with each passing generation. However, despite the peace they had fought so fiercely to protect, the legacy of the oath still lingered. The oath-bearers who followed Kaelin and Lysandra honored their sacrifice and upheld the teachings of balance. But they could not ignore the quiet whispers that began to stir once more. Whispers that spoke of new threats, new forces that sought to corrupt the peace and awaken forgotten powers. It was in the heart of Silver Dawn that the next chapter of the Silver Oath would begin. As the great temple to the Silver Oath stood proudly in the capital, its gates were once again open to those who sought to uphold the light, to stand against the shadows. A new generation of oath-bearers had risen. Among them was a young woman named Alara, the daughter of two esteemed oath-bearers. Her family had long been a beacon of strength and wisdom, and Alara had been raised with the teachings of the Silver Oath. But her heart was filled with questions that even the oldest of the oath-bearers could not answer. The world had changed in subtle ways over the years. While peace had flourished, there were whispers of shadows creeping back into the edges of the kingdom. Alara, determined to honor the legacy of Kaelin and Lysandra, sought to uncover the truth behind these whispers. One night, in the deepest halls of the temple, Alara discovered an ancient scroll, hidden in a secret chamber. It was a prophecy, written long before the battle with the Black Flame. The prophecy spoke of a time when the Silver Oath would face a choice, one that would determine the fate of the balance itself. The scroll read, "When the last flame fades, and the silver light wanes, the oath-bearers shall rise anew, with a choice to make. Will they embrace the darkness they once sealed, or will they remain true to the light they swore to protect?" Alara's heart pounded as she read the words. It was a call to arms, a warning that the oath was not yet complete. The balance was fragile, and it seemed that the oath-bearers would soon be tested once again. Alara gathered a small group of trusted oath-bearers, young men and women who, like her, had dedicated their lives to the study of the Silver Oath. Together, they journeyed to the farthest reaches of the kingdom, seeking answers to the mystery that had been hidden for centuries. The further they ventured, the more they felt the presence of an ancient force watching them. It was a force that seemed to draw from the very fabric of the world itself. In the ancient ruins of a forgotten city, Alara and her companions discovered an artifact unlike any Othera silver medallion, glowing with an ethereal light. As Alara held it, the air around them seemed to shift, and a voice echoed from the past. Alara of the Silver Oath, the voice intoned, "You are the heir to a legacy that stretches back to the dawn of time. The balance must be restored, but not through force alone. The true power of the oath lies not in the sword, but in the heart." The vision faded, leaving Alara breathless. She understood then that the oath was not merely about guarding against darkness, it was about understanding it, embracing it, and using it in harmony with the light. Alara and her companions returned to Silver Dawn, where they shared their discoveries with the Council of Oathbearers. The prophecy was clear: the time had come to face the choice. The Oathbearers could no longer turn away from the shadows. They had to learn to live with them, to wield both light and darkness as one. The Silver Oath, reborn, would guide them not just in protecting the kingdom, but in understanding the deeper nature of the world, the balance between creation and destruction, light and shadow. In the days that followed, the Oathbearers gathered once more at the Temple of Light, where Alara and the others stood before the altar, their hands raised in solemn oath. The silver blade gleamed in the light, a symbol of their renewed purpose. "We, the Oathbearers," Alara spoke, her voice steady, "swear to protect the balance between light and darkness. We will guard the flame, but we will also learn from the shadows." The Silver Oath lives on, not in the absence of darkness, but in the unity of all things. With that, the Oathbearers pledged their eternal loyalty to the Silver Oath, knowing that their mission was far from over. They would face new challenges, new forces, and perhaps even new betrayals. But they would do so together, for they understood now that true strength lay in the acceptance of both light and shadow. And so, the Silver Oath was reborn, its legacy stretching into the future, as it had always been destined to do. Though Kaelin and Lysandra had long since passed, their spirits lived on in the hearts of the Oathbearers who followed them. The battle between light and dark was eternal. But the Oathbearers now understood that they were not just protectors of the light, they were keepers of balance itself. As long as the Silver Oath stood, the world would be safeguarded from those who sought to upset the equilibrium of the universe. And in the heart of Silver Dawn, the flame burned brightly, casting its silver light upon the world. A reminder that even in the darkest of times, hope would always find its way. And thus, the story of the Black Flame and the Silver Oath lived on, a legend passed down through the ages, reminding all who heard it that the greatest power lies not in what we fight against, but in what we choose to protect. Years passed since Alara and the new generation of Oathbearers had pledged their renewed allegiance to the Silver Oath. Peace once again enveloped Silver Dawn, but peace, as they knew, was a fleeting illusion. Despite their best efforts to protect the balance, the whispers of an ancient, unspeakable power began to stir once more. Dark dreams plagued the people of Silver Dawn, and shadows gathered in the quietest corners of the kingdom. Deep in the heart of the Silver Oath's sanctuary, Alara meditated, seeking answers in the stillness of her mind. In her vision, the black flame flickered faintly at first, but unmistakably present. The flame had not been entirely destroyed. It was merely lying dormant, waiting to be awakened by a force greater than any they had yet encountered. Its dormant power now called to those who would seek it, promising to grant unimaginable power in exchange for the surrender of the soul. Alara knew that if this force was allowed to rise again, the balance they had worked so hard to protect would be shattered forever. And yet, the black flame had been the very thing that had once sealed away the ancient void. If it had returned, there could be only one conclusion: it was needed again, but only for the darkest of purposes. Alara called upon the Council of Oathbearers, seeking counsel on the disturbing visions. Many were skeptical, believing the black flame to be a legend, a story of long past. But Alara, as the heir to the oath, knew better. The flame had never truly gone out. The black flame is not a mere weapon, she explained, her voice filled with the weight of her knowledge. It is a force of nature, one that holds the power to reshape the world. But in the wrong hands, it is a destructive, insatiable thing. Among the council was a figure known as Varric, an elder oath-bearer who had long kept a secret from even his closest peers. He had once known the keeper of the black flame, an individual who had been chosen to guard the flame and, if necessary, awaken it when the time was right. Varric had kept this secret for many years, fearing what might happen should the world discover the keeper's true identity. But in this moment, with the flames of prophecy rekindling, he could no longer remain silent. The keeper is not a person, Varric revealed, his voice quiet but firm. The keeper is a place, an ancient relic hidden from the world. It is a shrine and altar that calls to those who seek the flame. Whoever finds the shrine will be able to wield the power of the flame, but they must be prepared to pay a terrible price. Alara's heart sank as the implications of Varric's words settled in. If the shrine is found, the black flame will awaken. Varric nodded gravely, and the one who awakens it will either save or doom the world. But only those who truly understand the balance can wield such power without losing themselves to it. Determined to stop the flame from falling into the wrong hands, Alara set out with a small group of oath-bearers to find the hidden shrine before it could be discovered by the forces of darkness. They traveled across lands forgotten by time, venturing into places where the very air seemed thick with the weight of ancient memories. Through shadowed forests and over towering mountains, they journeyed each step, taking them closer to the shrine that could either save their world or bring about its ultimate destruction. The landscape seemed to shift before their eyes, as though the earth itself was guiding them toward their fate. As they approached the shrine, the air grew heavier, as if something was watching them. The temple itself was hidden deep beneath the roots of an enormous, ancient tree. Its walls were covered in runes, glowing faintly with an eerie light. Alara stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "It's here," she whispered. They had found it, the shrine that held the power of the black flame. But as they approached, a shadow loomed over them, and from the darkness emerged a figure. A figure cloaked in black, its face hidden behind a mask of pure shadow. "You should not have come," the figure spoke in a voice like 1,000 whispers. "The black flame is not meant to be awakened. It belongs to the void, to the nothingness that lies beyond this world." Alara stepped forward, her hand on the hilt of the silver blade. "We are the oath-bearers," she said, her voice unwavering. "We are the ones who will protect the balance. And we will not let the darkness consume us." The figure raised its hand, and the ground shook beneath them. "Then you will die, just as all those who have come before you." A fierce battle erupted between the oath-bearers and the shadowy figure, a creature born of the void itself. It was a battle of light and darkness, a contest of wills that would determine the fate of their world. Alara fought with all her might, wielding the silver blade as it gleamed with the light of 1,000 stars. Her companions fought valiantly by her side, each of them drawing on the power of the oath they had sworn to protect. But even as they fought, the shrine pulsed with dark energy, the black flame flickering to life once more. With a final cry of defiance, Alara plunged the silver blade into the heart of the shrine. The blade shimmered with pure light, and the black flame erupted into a blinding inferno. And then, as the flame burned brighter and brighter, the world seemed to stand still. When the light faded, the shrine was gone. The shadowy figure had vanished, and the world seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The black flame was no longer a threat. But as Alara and her companions stood amidst the remains of the shrine, they realized the truth: the flame had not been destroyed, it had been transformed. The oath-bearers stood united, knowing that their duty was far from over. The balance had been restored for now, but they could not forget the lesson they had learned: light and darkness were two halves of the same whole. And the silver oath would remain, ever watchful, ever ready to protect the world from the forces that sought to tear it apart. And so, the silver oath lived on, passed down through the generations, always guarding the balance between light and shadow. The legacy of Kaylin, Lysandra, and the oath-bearers who had come before them endured, a constant reminder that the greatest power lay not in the flame, but in the hearts of those who chose to protect it. The black flame had been extinguished for now, but as long as the oath-bearers stood, the balance would remain. For the silver oath was not just a vow. It was a beacon of hope that would shine in the darkest of times, a light that would never falter, never fade. And thus, the story continued, a tale that would echo through the ages, forever unbroken. Years after the fall of the black flame, Silver Dawn had flourished once again. The oath-bearers, under Alara's guidance, had restored peace to the realm. Yet, despite the triumph over darkness, there was an unsettling feeling that lingered, a quiet, persistent whisper on the wind that the balance was not entirely safe. Alara's heart, though lighter than before, still carried the weight of the black flame's rebirth. It had been vanquished once more, but she could not shake the feeling that the darkness was merely biding its time, waiting for the next opportunity. One evening, as Alara stood alone atop the high tower of the Silver Temple, gazing out at the horizon, she was approached by a figure cloaked in shadows. The figure was not threatening, nor was it an enemy. It was a messenger, one who carried tidings from beyond the realm. Alara, daughter of the Oath, the figure spoke in a voice that was both familiar and distant. The world has changed once again. There are forces beyond your understanding that seek to manipulate the very foundation of the balance you fought so hard to protect. Alara's gaze hardened as she turned toward the figure, recognizing the voice, but not the messenger. "Who are you, and what do you mean by forces beyond my understanding?" The figure lifted its hood, revealing the pale, worn face of an old oath-bearer, one she had not seen in many years. "It is I, Alaran," the figure said, his eyes tired but burning with a purpose. "I have seen the darkness returning, not from the depths of the earth, but from within the very fabric of the oath itself. The silver flame, once thought eternal, has begun to flicker again. The balance is shifting." Alara's breath caught in her throat. "But we sealed the flame. We stopped it from consuming the world. How can it return now?" Alaran's face grew somber. The silver oath was never meant to be absolute. The flame, it has always been a reflection of the hearts of those who wield it. The balance was never truly contained. It only hid within the souls of the oath-bearers. Now, that flame is calling out to its true keeper, one who would embrace its dark potential. Alara felt a chill run down her spine. And who might that be? As Alaran explained, Alara realized with growing dread that the oath, despite its seeming purity, had left a dangerous flaw unaddressed, a flaw born from the very nature of the silver flame. The oath-bearers had only been binding themselves to a ritual, without fully understanding the extent of the flame's influence. And now, this influence had begun to corrupt the heart of the oath itself. The silver oath had always existed as a binding force to maintain balance, but it had also always been tied to the hearts of the people who made the vow. The power to control the flame had been a shared responsibility, but as it had passed from generation to generation, the purity of its power had been worn thin. The flame sought a new master, one who could accept its duality, both light and shadow. Alaran revealed that there was a prophecy, one that spoke of a chosen one who would unite the flame's power and shape the future of the oath. However, the prophecy was cryptic. Some parts spoke of hope, others of doom. Alara's heart sank as she listened. But how can we stop the flame if its chosen master is already among us? How can we prevent the darkness from taking over again? Alaran met her gaze, his eyes filled with sorrow. It is not a question of stopping the flame, Alara. It is about understanding it. If the chosen one is to rise, you must learn to embrace both the light and the shadow within yourself. You must seek the one who is destined to become the next keeper, and help them to harness the power of the flame, not to destroy it, but to control it. The days that followed were filled with an urgency that weighed on Alara and the oath-bearers. There was no time to waste. They could feel the shift in the air, the return of the flame's influence, like a storm building on the horizon. The silver oath had been tested before, but this new challenge was unlike anything they had faced. Alara knew that the search for the chosen one would not be an easy task. The prophecy was vague, and the chosen keeper could be anyone, perhaps even someone she knew. It could be a leader of great renown, or a humble soul lost in the shadows. All she knew was that they would emerge from the depths of the oath's legacy, and it was her responsibility to find them before the flame consumed them all. With Alaran's guidance, Alara set out on a journey to search for the chosen one, hoping to find the one who could restore balance once again. The path was unclear, but she knew that the only way forward was through trust, unity, and understanding. The journey led Alara far beyond Silver Dawn, to the forgotten lands that lay beyond the kingdom's borders. Along the way, she encountered many people who spoke of strange dreams, visions of the black flame burning brightly in the distance, calling them forth. Some believed these dreams to be a warning, others a promise of power. It became clear that the flame's influence had already begun to spread, drawing the attention of those who would seek to control it. As Alara ventured further, she met a young man named Rylas, a former scholar who had studied the ancient texts of the Silver Oath. He claimed to have had visions of the flame in his dreams, a pull he could not understand. Something within him stirred when he spoke of the flame, and Alara felt an undeniable connection to him. "Do you feel it too?" Alara asked him one night, her voice filled with the weight of her own uncertainty. "The pull of the flame?" Rylas nodded slowly, his gaze far off, as though he were seeing something beyond the present. "I do. I feel its power, like it is calling to me. But I don't know what it wants from me. I don't know how to control it." Alara could no longer ignore the truth. She had found the chosen one. But Rylas was not yet ready to wield the flame. Rylas was reluctant to embrace his fate, fearful of the consequences. The weight of the prophecy pressed heavily on his heart, but with Alara's guidance, he slowly began to understand the true nature of the flame. It was not a curse to be feared, but a force to be understood, a part of the eternal balance that governed the world. As the flame within Rylas began to awaken, Alara realized that it was not enough simply to find the chosen one. She had to guide him, help him face the darkness within himself, and show him how to wield the power of the silver flame without losing himself to it. And so, together, they prepared for the final trial, the trial that would determine not only Rylas's fate but the fate of the world itself. The trials ahead would not be easy, but the oath-bearers knew that this was the path they had always been destined to walk. The flame had been found once more, and its keeper had been chosen. Now, it was time to protect the balance and to ensure that the flame would burn true, lighting the way for generations to come. The silver oath had been tested, and the flame had been reborn. And though darkness would always rise to challenge the light, Alara and the oath-bearers would remain vigilant, standing as the guardians of the eternal balance. The days passed as Rylas trained under Alara's guidance, learning to harness the subtle, yet profound, power of the silver flame. But despite his growing strength, he remained unsure of himself. The weight of the flame, the legacy of the oath-bearers, was a burden that was slowly becoming unbearable. "I can feel it, Alara," Rylas confessed one evening as they sat by a fire. "The flame is inside me, but it's as if it wants to consume me. I can't control it. What if I become like the others who were corrupted by it? What if I lose myself to the darkness?" Alara's eyes softened as she placed a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "The flame calls to you because you are strong enough to hear it. But it does not command you. It only reveals the truth of your heart. The real test, Rylas, is not about controlling the flame, it is about controlling yourself. Only then will you understand how to wield its power." Despite her comforting words, Alara knew the trial ahead would be far more than Rylas could imagine. The silver flame was not just a tool, it was a reflection of one's soul. Its power did not lie in brute strength or domination, but in the purity of heart. The first true test came unexpectedly. The silver temple had been tranquil for many years, but now, deep within its walls, the flames of the oath began to flicker violently. It was a warning. The time for the final trial had arrived. Alara and Rylas stood at the entrance to the inner sanctum, where the sacred flame had once burned with the light of truth. But as they entered, they found that the flame had grown dark, and the very air around them seemed heavy with foreboding. "You must face it now, Rylas," Alara said, her voice steady but filled with concern. "The trial is not about defeating a foe, but about confronting what lies within you." Rylas hesitated, his heart pounding in his chest. "I don't know if I can. The flame is too strong. It scares me." Alara nodded solemnly. "You must not fear it. For if you do, the darkness will overtake you." With that, Rylas stepped forward, his hands trembling as he approached the central altar where the silver flame once burned. As he did, the flame stirred, and from its depths emerged a shadow, an embodiment of his deepest fears and regrets. It was not a physical enemy, but a manifestation of the darkness that had long dwelled within him. Rylas felt the weight of his past, the pain, the mistakes, the guilt all swirling around him. The shadow grew larger, its form shifting like smoke, and Rylas realized that this was not an enemy he could fight with a sword or magic. It was something far deeper, his own unresolved emotions. "Face it," Alara called from behind him. "Face yourself." The shadow twisted and writhed, forming the faces of those he had failed, those he had hurt, and those he had abandoned. It was his own inner turmoil, laid bare before him. Tears welled up in Rylas's eyes as he gazed upon the visions, but deep inside, something began to stir, a warmth, a strength he had never known. With a trembling hand, he reached out to the shadow. "I forgive you," he whispered to the darkness. "I forgive myself." The words, simple yet profound, caused the shadow to recoil. The darkness began to dissolve, its form unraveling into nothingness. The silver flame flared brightly once more, its light returning to its full brilliance. As the shadow vanished, Rylas felt a great weight lift from his heart. The flame that had once seemed like an overwhelming force was now a source of strength, a part of him that he could finally understand. Rylas stood before the silver flame, his heart now at peace. The trial had not been one of brute force, nor of external conflict. It had been a trial of the soul, one that required him to confront his inner darkness and emerge stronger. Alara approached him, her expression filled with pride. "You have done it, Rylas. You have faced your own darkness and embraced the truth within you. The flame has chosen you, not because of your strength, but because of your willingness to accept both the light and the shadow within." Rylas nodded, his eyes reflecting the understanding that had come to him. "I see now. The silver flame is not just a weapon, it is a part of who we are. It is a reflection of our hearts, our choices. It is only by understanding both light and shadow that we can truly protect the balance." As the silver flame burned brightly in the center of the sanctum, Alara knew that the future of the Oath-bearers was secure. Rylus had not only inherited the mantle of the flame, but he had also become its true keeper, one who would carry the responsibility with wisdom and compassion. With Rylus's acceptance as the true keeper of the silver flame, a new era began for the Oath-bearers. The realm was at peace once more, but this peace was different. It was not an absence of conflict, but a harmony that came from understanding and acceptance of both light and darkness. Rylus, now the bearer of the silver flame, vowed to protect the balance, to guide the Oath-bearers with the wisdom he had gained from his trials. But he also knew that there would always be challenges ahead, for the world was never truly free from darkness. And so, with Alara by his side and the Oath-bearers at his back, Rylus set forth on a new journey not as a ruler, but as a guardian. The silver flame would burn brighter than ever, a symbol of the unity between light and shadow, and a reminder that true power lay in understanding, not in domination. As the stars shone brightly above, the silver oath was reborn. And with it, a new era of peace and harmony was forged, one that would endure for generations to come. The flame burned eternally in the heart of Silver Dawn, its light reaching out to all corners of the realm. And though the shadows would always seek to rise again, the silver flame stood as a beacon, a reminder that as long as the Oath-bearers remained true, the balance would be protected. And so, the story of the Black Flame and the Silver Oath came to a close. But in the hearts of those who lived by the oath, the flame would never die. Today's story ends here. See you later.